Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. We always like to just dive right in. So if you're new here, we go deep, like the name says. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, by the way. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. You won't miss out on all our new, future deep dives. Today, we're heading to West Africa. We'll be looking at the crew people. They're incredible, known for being amazing when it comes to seafaring, but even more so for, fiercely resisting the slave trade.
It's really a story about, what humans can do to stay strong. And it shows how powerful culture can be, especially when you face huge problems.
Crew people are mostly found in Liberia and Côte d'Ivoire. Their lives have always, been close to the Atlantic. They've always been super skilled fishermen and traders, real masters of the ocean.
But what makes them stand out is that they just refused to be taken during the slave trade. They would rather die or fight to the death than be enslaved. They got a reputation for that.
That's incredible. And they use these distinct indigo tattoos, usually on their foreheads and the bridge of their noses, to show they weren't captured.
Yeah. Those tattoos were like a statement, a statement of freedom and defiance, a reminder that they would never give up.
It's such a powerful image.
Yeah.
Shows their commitment to their own freedom.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to them than just resisting. They were amazing seafarers, known for understanding those ocean currents.
Yeah.
And not just canoeing. They were great at surfing, too.
Oh, yeah. Their skills were so good, they ended up working on British merchant ships and warships. So they weren't just getting by, they were really doing well and connecting with people all over the world.
One thing I found interesting is this. The crew people were already trading with Europeans and explorers. Before the freed slaves even came back from North America, they were involved in global trade. They weren't just sitting back and watching.
That's really important because it shows they had power and control. Their story isn't just about resistance. It's about making smart choices in a super complicated time.
Right. Speaking of making choices, what about the name crew? Where does that come from?
Oh, it's interesting. It comes from the European word gang because of how they organize their work. It shows how names and labels can change over time and how those changes reflect who has power. So the Clow people, that's what they called themselves originally, became known as the crew or crew by the Europeans in the area.
Makes you think about how history gets written and whose point of view gets heard the most. What about today? How is their legacy still around?
Well, there's still a big group in Liberia, about 7% of the population. Their language is still spoken.
Right.
And their influence on the culture is huge.
But they're not just in Liberia, are they?
Exactly. By the late 20th century, more crew people lived outside their traditional areas than inside. Monrovia, the capital of Liberia, became a center for them.
Wow. So they've had an impact way beyond their original home. And think about this. Some really famous people have crew heritage. Former presidents of Liberia, like George Weah and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and those world-famous soccer players, Didier Drogba and Serge Gnabry. Amazing how this group went from resisting slavery to impacting politics and sports around the world.
It really makes you think how those early meetings with European traders might have actually helped the crew resist slavery. They saw what was happening in the slave trade, and could get ready.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Watching what happened to other Africans must have made them want to fight back. Do you think seeing it firsthand gave them a strategy?
Yeah, probably. It might have helped them come up with ways to protect themselves, like those special tattoos they had to avoid being captured.
And being so good with the sea must have been a huge help too, right? They knew the waters, they were experts at navigation, they could use all that to stay free.
Absolutely. The sea was how they lived and how they protected themselves. Knowing the currents and being such good sailors gave them, an edge. A lot of other groups didn't have that.
It makes you think about the different ways people resist. Sometimes it's fighting, but for the crew, it was also about using their skills, their knowledge, to outsmart those who wanted to enslave them. What do you think about that?
It's a really important thing to remember when we study history. Resistance isn't always one big thing, It can be part of everyday life, in their culture, their jobs, how they use their skills. The crews are a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's about surviving, changing with the times, and most importantly, keeping your identity when things are really tough. Their story feels important even now, don't you think?
Absolutely. The crew story gives us a way to look at how cultures stay strong today. How do groups around the world keep fighting for their rights and keep their traditions in a world where everything is connected? It's a question that really matters.
It's about understanding those struggles from the past and seeing that the fight for equality and recognition is still happening.
Exactly. And stories like the cruise remind us that people are strong and that it's important to stand up for what you believe in.
The Crew story. It goes beyond time and place. It's a message of hope and resilience that everyone can relate to.
Their journey shows us that the human spirit is powerful and that there's always hope, even when things are really, really bad.
This has been, I don't know, really powerful, made me think a lot. The Crew tribe story is one of courage, of not giving up, and always wanting to be free.
It's a strong reminder that even when things are incredibly tough, culture can survive. And more than that, it can grow stronger.
We've learned so much about how good they were at seafaring, how they resisted slavery, and the impact they still have.
And we've seen how their story connects to bigger ideas. How cultures stay strong, fighting for what you believe in, and working towards equality for everyone.
Before we finish, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. What can we learn from the Crew tribe about how cultures are all connected?
That's a big question. How have our interactions, the good and the bad, shaped history? What can we do now to understand each other better and have more respect for different cultures today?
Those are important questions. We should really think about them.
Absolutely. Looking at these questions can help us create a better, more fair future for everyone.
I think this deep dive has made people really curious about the Crew people and their amazing story.
We've talked a lot about, how important they were historically, but I'm really interested in their culture. Like, what did they believe in? What were their traditions like?
Right, good point. We've talked about their strength, fighting back.
Yeah.
But what about their culture? Like, what made them so strong?
Well, they had this rich and diverse culture. They were known for really detailed wood carvings, and they had this vibrant music and dance. And they were big on storytelling, passing down their history and beliefs through stories, keeping it alive.
So it seems like the ocean, it wasn't just a part of their lives. It was everything.
Oh, yeah, totally. It wasn't just about food for them. It was part of their spiritual beliefs, their customs. They had all these rituals for fishing, sailing, and their myths and stories are full of tales about the sea and all its mysteries.
It makes you wonder how those beliefs, those traditions, help them deal with everything, especially the slave trade. Do you think having such a strong culture made them more resilient?
That's something historians are still trying to figure out. It makes sense, though, right? Their
Yeah.
sense of community, their deep beliefs, their shared culture, it probably all helped them resist, and hold on to who they were.
It's like their culture was a shield, protecting them from, the awful things in the slave trade that try to take away their humanity.
That's a good way to put it. And it says a lot about how powerful culture and tradition can be, even when things are really, really hard.
This has been amazing. It's like the Crew story shows us that culture isn't just about art or music. It's about who you are, how you bounce back, and the things that connect us to each other, to our past.
It's about finding strength in shared values, in our traditions, especially when we face tough times. The Crew people are the best example of that.
Well said. This deep dive, it's been a real eye-opener. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of their story, There's so much more to learn.
Yeah, definitely. There's always more to discover, and we hope you'll keep digging into their story.
So, to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Crew people. We hope you have a new appreciation for their incredible story, how they resisted, how they adapted, and how strong their culture was. Don't forget to check out the show notes for more info. And as always, thanks for listening.